What you're about to see isn't just a legal debate. It's a political narrative battle. Every word, every photo, every allegation is carefully framed to create a perception of integrity, victimhood, or wrongdoing. As you listen, pay attention to who is being blamed, what historical context is ignored, and how both parties frame legality and morality for political advantage.
Just so the American people understand, this issue of weaponization of justice goes to the core of the integrity of our criminal justice system. And I think we can all agree that no individual, no group should be targeted simply because they are a political opponent or because the President of the United States has some personal animosity toward them. You've just said that President Trump is the most transparent president in history. Tragically and chillingly, you may be right when it comes to criminal justice, because far from ending weaponization of justice, I would submit, Madam Attorney General, that President Trump has embodied it. And we have a record. It is a public record of his express instructions that certain individuals be investigated. The Attorney General of New York, Tish James, my colleague, Adam Schiff, the former CISA director, Chris Krebs, the DHS former Chief of Staff, Miles Taylor. There's a list. And he has been transparent. In fact, 5 days before the indictment of James Comey, he put this post up as instructions to you. He didn't mince words. He was very open and public that you should indict James Comey and others because they are guilty as hell. No more delay now. 5 days before you indicted, or grand jury at your instructions indicted James Comey. I'd like to know from you what conversations you've had with President Trump about the indictment of James Comey.
Senator, I am not going to discuss any conversations I have or have not had with the President of the United
did you
States.
See that
you're
post?
an attorney, you have a law degree, and you know that I'm not going to do that. I also find it fascinating, because I'll keep fighting to ensure that law enforcement and the judicial process move forward without political interference. No one is above the law, not even the president. That's a quote from you, Senator Blumenthal, in 2017.
Well, let me ask you then, when you saw that
no
post,
one is above the law. That was your quote.
When you saw that post, did you talk to anybody in the White House?
I am not going to discuss any conversations I have, nor any investigations, nor
you were unwilling to tell this committee
cases
about conversations with the White House
and if I may
James
continue,
Comey's indictment.
And if I may continue,
let me show you a picture.
James Comey was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States.
The night before James Comey's indictment, you had dinner with the President of the United States. Pretty intimate group.
Actually, there were a lot of people there that night. That's a great picture.
Was James Comey discussed at that dinner?
I love that picture. That's a great picture. And there were a lot of people there that night. I think the entire cabinet was there.
Did you discuss James Comey with the President of the United States? He was sitting just to your left.
Well, 2 seats down, yes. 2 seats down. And I am not going to discuss any conversations I've had or not have with the President of the United States.
Because the American public is entitled to know, Madam Attorney General.
The entire cabinet was at that dinner.
Whether you took instructions from President Trump after he told you very directly to indict James Comey, which is weaponization of the Department of Justice. I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Hawley, that weaponization of our justice system must end. That's the reason that I proposed legislation, and I challenge him and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join me in legislation that would create a statutory right of action for people who are selectively or maliciously prosecuted for political reasons. It would codify your manual, the Department of Justice manual, on political prohibitions against political considerations in charging decisions, and prohibit the White House from intervening, President Trump and any other president from intervening in charging decisions. It would make reforms to the grand jury process. You've just said this grand jury was liberal. We should reform the grand jury process to ensure that the government is not abusing its power and authority, and it will require transparency and accountability reforms at DOJ so that you will and other attorneys general be held accountable for these kinds of decisions. Will you join me in supporting that kind of reform?
Senator Blumenthal, I find it so interesting that you didn't bring any of this up during President Biden's administration when he was doing everything to protect Hunter Biden, his son. And I think you just saw what Director Radcliffe just released.
You know, this is an effort to be positive.
If I can finish answering the question, I'm not going to yell over you. I'm not going to get in the gutter with you. But information that the Biden administration told them not to investigate Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine. I'm not going to be lectured to you about integrity by someone who lied about being in the military just to be elected a senator.
The merger between Hewlett-Packard Enterprises and Juniper Network was settled. You authorized the settlement. It was the subject of a lawsuit to block it. The settlement produced virtually no concessions from Hewlett-Packard. It was a settlement that prompted settlement yourself.
As I stated earlier, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running the antitrust unit. And as I stated earlier, that is still a pending matter, as you should know with a law degree,
did you not,
that all mergers. If I can finish answering the question.
I'm going to,
if I could finish. No, I'm answering the question.
Because my time is limited.
No, well then don't ask me a question. So,
let me just ask you.
As I said, you have a law degree. You know that not only are mergers agreed upon, but they have to go to a court of law to be approved. It's a multi-step process. And as I said earlier, that is still pending. And I have full faith in Gail Slater.
And Ms. Slater reportedly objected to the settlement.
Reportedly.
And moreover, two of her top officials were fired, Roger Alford and Bill Sinner. Did you authorize and direct those firings after they objected to the settlement?
I am not going to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation in my office.
This video is a perfect example of how political hearings can mix legitimate concerns with partisan framing, creating a narrative that simplifies complex issues. Senator Blumenthal is raising an important point. No one should face selective prosecution for political reasons. This is a fundamental principle in a democracy. Weaponizing the Department of Justice undermines public trust, and any accusation of political interference deserves scrutiny. Blumenthal cites examples like James Comey, Adam Schiff, and Chris Krebs to illustrate how Trump allegedly instructed the DOJ on certain investigations. If true, these are serious concerns about political overreach and the erosion of judicial independence. However, the other side of the hearing, which focuses heavily on Hunter Biden and the Biden administration, reflects a classic conservative narrative. The idea that investigations or alleged non-investigations are automatically partisan. Attorney General statements pointing to Hunter Biden's handling and prior DOJ guidance highlight that this is not a new problem. Administrations of both parties have faced allegations of political bias. The key liberal takeaway is that holding power accountable requires consistent standards, not selective outrage depending on who occupies the White House. The discussion of grand juries, mergers, and DOJ personnel like Gail Slater, Roger Alford, and Bill Sir also shows how hearings often mix real procedural questions with political theater. Yes, personnel decisions and corporate settlements raise important questions about oversight, but framing them as partisan attacks risks distracting from systemic reform needs. Transparency, accountability, and fairness. Ultimately, the liberal perspective emphasizes principles over personalities. It's not about defending Trump or Biden personally or attacking Blumenthal. It's about ensuring that justice is blind, impartial, and insulated from political pressure. Weaponization of justice isn't a partisan problem. It's a systemic vulnerability that must be addressed through legislation, independent oversight, and a culture of integrity in federal law enforcement. By framing this hearing in partisan terms, both sides risk turning serious governance issues into spectacles. What really matters is creating mechanisms that prevent interference, ensure accountability, and protect the public's trust in justice. The public deserves laws and processes that work consistently, not narratives designed for political headlines.